Dear Rentals Club members, thank you for joining us now. I am with Jon Stonham. Jon is the CEO of Elite Havens. As you may know, Elite Havens is the biggest, largest villa rental management company in Asia. So it's a great pleasure to have Jon here. And first, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. A little bored of being at home.
It's a pleasure to have you because we'll be able to cover some great, interesting topics together. And of course, we were talking about what your business is because it's a very interesting business for which touches upon villas, luxury, and the whole region. But also, we'll be talking about the road to recovery to COVID-19, right? Who's going to be traveling first? What the expectations will be now? Are they going to be very different or somewhat different? Who will be traveling first, as I said, could be in terms of age, for example. And then we'll talk about, for example, the advantages of villas. Why would villas be a good place to capture this new demand coming up? And then also we finish with notion of standards. When we talk about luxury, for example, luxury villas, obviously standards have always been there, but what's new here, and what again, how is it going to play out to capture the new demand coming up? That's going to be very interesting to hear. So Jon, maybe can you share a bit about your business?
Okay. Well, Elite Havens is probably the largest luxury villa rental company in Asia. We have properties in Thailand, Indonesia, Japan, Maldives, Sri Lanka. And the hot news at the moment is we're just moving into India in the last couple of weeks. So we now have properties in Goa and outside Mumbai. All the properties are luxury properties in the fact that they're the top end villas. We're very careful about what we choose. They're all fully staffed and they're all privately owned as well. So effectively, someone builds a second home, they give us the keys, we look after it, and we rent it out on a global basis for them. So we have just over 300 properties across the whole region. We manage the properties and we market the properties. And we've been doing it now since 1998, so for 22 years.
And in normal circumstances, who will be your guests in terms of makeup or in terms of origins? Who will be the guests of Elite Havens?
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of our guests, 85% are families. And either individual family units or multiple families holidaying together or multi-generational families. So if you look at it, say, an Indian client, it's not unusual for the whole extended family to come. And a villa's that perfect environment for them to do that. You have that luxury of having your own private space. You have the luxury of being flexible. So for families, it's really the perfect venue. The second biggest group probably is groups, and that will be groups of friends, whether they're coming on a golfing holiday or they're coming on a wellness retreat or just getting together. And the third biggest market for us is actually private weddings. We hold something like 450 weddings a year.
Fantastic.
In our villas, and so it's a very private and a very personal experience, and a villa works well for that. So those are the biggest markets. In terms of geography, wow, it's changed dramatically in the last 10 years. So 10 years ago, Europe was a big market, and as Europe has had its catastrophes financially, that's been replaced by Asia. So our biggest market in Asia is actually mainland China for, say, Thailand. Our biggest market for Bali is Australia. And then all the other constituent countries within Asia have a very strong supply side. Russia, the Middle East, both strong supporters of villa concepts. They like the privacy. They like the personal service. They like the chefs. They like everything a hotel does, but they want it for themselves. So those are so geographically, we actually have about 120 countries, but those are the main countries which users now.
Thanks for sharing, John, about this. So you really have this regional footprint that's extending, we just heard, and thanks for sharing as well the makeup of your, I would say, usual guests, families, groups, private weddings. That's super clear. So what's happening right now? What do you have guests staying right now at your place, and how your place is, and how different are they from these usual groups?
Yes, we do have guests. And I wouldn't say there are normal guests. Most of our guests are hiding from Corona or COVID, and they're looking for a place to stay long term, just to bunker down. In some cases, it's because they don't want to go home. In some cases, it's because they haven't been able to go home. So, for example, a lot of our Russian guests at the moment do not want to go back to Russia. Whereas some of our Australian guests actually can't get back. So we probably have 20 or 30 villas which are full at the moment, and they're full with long-term guests, but they're very much not our client. They're either an individual who wanted to get away from a hotel and just wanted some personal space. I don't think we have any family staying with us at the moment. It's usually individuals or a couple of individuals who are staying, and it's usually just to escape. And they want to have the social distancing, but in a very comfortable environment. Very different from our normal clientele.
And talking about the road to recovery, again, we mentioned you had families, groups, and weddings, private weddings happening. And so who do you think is going to come first? And I think you have an idea that it could be some certain groups coming back and enjoying a villa among themselves. So can you share about your view of what's going to happen and who will be these first travelers?
I think the main thing we're learning, or it seems to be sort of coming out, is that the villa is a good alternative to a hotel. You have it. The group, constituent group staying there is your group of friends. So it's social distancing already. You're not in a mass market environment where a hotel where you don't actually know who the other guests are. You don't know where the guests have been. You may even, you don't even know where the staff have been. Okay. So with a villa, you have your own personal space for a group of you. And I think people are now perceiving that as being the way to go in terms of to get a holiday, but to have not just the luxury of privacy, but the safety of privacy. And people are saying, well, okay, that's a good environment for me to bring my family. I think what we're seeing, we're seeing bookings for next year already. Mainly, the first group of people who are doing bookings at the moment are weddings, because people plan quite a long way ahead. And I think most people who are doing their wedding saying, well, I think this is probably going to be over by next year, so I'm going to plan my wedding. I think the last group we're going to see coming back is families. I think most parents are going to be a little bit more risk adverse. And so the actual act of traveling will only happen when they feel it's safe. Now, when it's safe, that's a good question. We are seeing bookings for Christmas already. In fact, we're getting quite busy for Christmas. I think people perceive that might be the time to travel. I think the first group which we'll see traveling are the younger generation. When we were talking earlier, I mentioned I've got a 21-year-old daughter. She would be on an airplane tomorrow. She thinks she's indestructible. She thinks this coronavirus is a complete pain up the backside for her and is actually a constraint on her social life. And so I think we'll find that the younger generation who are more risk, they're happy to take those risks, they'll travel first. And I think they'll travel in groups because one of the things they've missed is this personal contact. We're all Zoomed up, we're all on Teamed up, we're all Skyped up, and actually I think they'd like to meet face to face. And so I think we're finding that the first lift will be the younger generation who want to get together in an environment and a villa is not only good value when you start looking at that sort of group, but it's also secure and safe, and gives them a location where they can enjoy themselves. So I think 20 to 35-year-olds will see traveling first. We're already seeing that in China. It's that age group which is now really wanting to travel. So I think it's going to be the younger generation travel first. I think the families will come last when they're ready.
And John, you started touching upon China, young Chinese travelers traveling first. So in terms of, let's say, our regions of of countries of origin or destinations, what are you seeing, and what do you think is going to be happening?
Yeah, I think the speed and the destinations which will open up and who comes is going to be a number of factors. If we take Bali's actually had a relatively easy ride from this COVID. If you look at it, there's not been many infections. The hospitals have not been overrun. It's actually done very, very well. And I think a lot of that's to do with the fact that its natural sort of banjar system in Bali has meant that their social distancing has been controlled at a very local level. And to be honest, Bali's population growth happens when the tourists come. And so as soon as all the tourists left, actually the numbers of people in Bali is relatively small. So they've got social distancing down to a T, and they've got it down to their local. So as a destination, Bali is sort of not had much problem, and therefore is really open for business. The question is, who's going to come? That's going to be dictated by several factors. I think the biggest factor is governments, when they're going to let people travel internationally. And it's not whether they're going to let them travel, it's what they're going to do when they come back. So, for example, you might leave Australia, but you won't be welcome back. I can leave Singapore, but I can come back, but then I have to go into 14 days quarantine. So I think until we start to understand what governments are going to do, there's no point in going on a week's holiday if when you get back, you're going to spend 2 weeks locked up again. And in some cases, like Singapore, you're locked up in a government institution, for want of a better word. You can't even be locked up at home, sort of thing. So I think the first thing dictating who's going to be first will be dictated by governments. And that will then give people the confidence to be able to travel. Which countries will go first? I mean, China wants to go. And I think the other end of the spectrum is people being confident that the guests coming are also risk-free. So, each of our villas has, let's say, 12 staff. It's true to say that over the last 3 or 4 months, those staff have been very concerned about who's staying in our villas, because the last thing they want to do is catch something and then take it back to their families. So they've got to be confident that the guest who's coming to stay with them is not going to be a threat to the local community. And it works both ways. So there's a lot of pieces to the jigsaw which sort of have to fit together. What governments are doing, those people who want to travel and take that risk to travel, and those people who are looking after them and wanting to look after them. Now, and then the airlines. I mean, I know the airlines are desperate to get in the air because at the end of the day, they're not making any money sitting on the ground. But again, which airlines are flying which routes, and can we rely on those flights? Right at the beginning when this happened, a lot of people got stranded because they couldn't get home because flights were being cancelled. So all of those pieces have to fit together to make travel work again.
I like the way you describe the jigsaw and how things have to fall into place. And I will just chime in with my own example of my villa in Bali, as you said, right? If people don't know what Banjar is, as you mentioned, it's like this local village organization really that has a lot of power, right, in Bali. They can decide all kind of things about the life in the village. And in the case of my properties, basically there's one road going through the village and leading then to the villa. And the local Bajar has blocked the road because of course, they it enabled the village to quarantine itself, but also meant that they were not welcoming tourists to any villa that could be a risk to them. So just so it's perfect example, as you said, of like people protecting themselves, and also because tourists can be seen as a threat to the community, which is fair enough, and just something we've actually seen in many countries, like in the US, people are being pushed back from Sonoma County. So it's something that's happening everywhere, and it's really part of the global jigsaw. It's a great analogy. Another point here about the villas, luxury villas. You talk about the staff, for example, but and the fact that I think every obviously villa in your portfolio has been handpicked and inspected, right? So the notion of standards and trust in the cleanliness standards, for example, is very important nowadays. But I don't think luxury villa companies like yours have waited this new pandemic to have like very demanding standards. So how do you think, what actions have you taken for your own business, for example, with the staff in your villas? And again, how do you think this let's say increase in cleanliness standards will affect the trust that guests may have in your villas?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, we didn't have dirty villas beforehand. We don't have dirty villas now. When you're renting a luxury villa and you're paying, the money you pay to stay with us, you expect very, very high standards. The same standards you get in a 5-star hotel or better. So, to be honest, our SOPs on cleanliness haven't changed. What we've done is, we've reinforced them. We've reinforced our training. We've reinforced our training on both hygiene and cleanliness and the importance of it. But our staff know that because they've been living with that day to day. Where we've probably had to educate people more is really what they do when they leave the villa. So, if your chef is going to leave the villa going home, making sure he maintains the standards that we expect in the villa in his home life as well. And what we're finding actually is operationally, we're finding a lot more staff are living in the villa, staying on site with the guests. And we have the villas in Asia are designed so there's a separate area for the staff. It's very, we're used to that in Asia. And so they're saying, well, actually, I choose to stay in the villa mainly because I don't want to spread anything to the guests. And so I want to make sure that the experience we give to the guest is safe. And I'm not going to be taking anything, from the village, let's say, into the villa. But, our SOPs of cleanliness haven't changed. Our SOPs on hygiene haven't changed. What has changed a little bit is our interaction with the guests. Now, as a company, we've always pride ourselves in trying to give the service that the guest wants. And guests want different things. So we have some guests who stay with us, and they really do not want to see a member of staff. They just want total privacy on the villa. And when they need a member of staff, they'll go and find them. And we have other guests at the other extreme who just want to be waited on hand and foot, and they want the staff there permanently, and they want full on service round the clock. Okay. And so we're used to sort of feeling out guests and finding out what they want and adjusting our service accordingly. And this is the same now. Does the guest want us to wear a mask? And the use of masks is happening more and more. And a lot of our guests are saying, actually, I'm very happy for the staff not to wear masks because I've had the same member of staff for the last 14 days. I know they've been staying in the villa. And so therefore I don't really need that. And then also to do with service, some guests would like at dinner time to be served and, wine poured and people there making sure they're getting full service. Other guests are now saying, look, leave the food on the table. We'll serve ourselves. We'll let you know when we finish and then you can clear away. And so I think really being in tune with the guest is probably the area where we focused more. It's not something new to us because we've always done it. We've just had to reinforce the reasons why we're doing it and the reasons why guests might be slightly more sensitive to it than in previous times. But ultimately, luxury is guests getting what they want, when they want, how they want. That's luxury. And so we've been doing that for many years.
And John, my last question then today would be, it's not been the first crisis that the company has gone through in terms of SARS and MERS and volcanoes erupting.
Yeah.
Things happen. So what would be your advice for property manager let's imagine it's been their first crisis ever, the first time. So what would be the advice for these property managers? How they should be using this time right now? How should they think about the future?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think one of the things I remember, I'm old, I've been around a long time, and I've seen, as you say, SARS, MERS, financial crises, all these things over the years. One of the things I always say to people is that people have very short memories. We're in the middle of a crisis at the moment, and it's very difficult to see a route out of it. But when we come out of it, people do have very short memories. And will it change a lot? There's a lot of people saying that they think travel will change enormously. Travel's constantly changing, and it's going on a journey, whether it's to do with the environment, or whether it's to do with society putting pressure on how much we travel and our CO2 emissions. There's a constant change in travel. That's always there. But we're built to travel. People are built to explore the world, so travel will come back. I have no doubt about that. What I am clear on, though, is that our sector of the travel, I think, will benefit. I think people will experience, private villa accommodation, and they'll see the benefits of it, whether it's value or whether it's privacy or whether it's safety. They'll see the benefits of that, and will stick to it. And turn more away from, say, hotels. But people are saying that the hotel buffet will disappear forever. It won't. It'll come back. It might be a bit different in the future. I think one of the things I have noticed about this particular event, SARS came back very quickly. It was over and back, and there was a real boom 3 months after SARS. It's very clear that COVID is longer, deeper, wider than anything we've ever experienced. And so therefore, I think we've got a longer journey to follow. But things will go back to normal. It just may take a little bit of time.
That's wise advice. Optimistic, but also wise advice from you. So, John Stonham, CEO of Elite Havens, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to contact you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, by email is probably by far the best way. And now I'm at home, I'm getting a lot more emails answered than I normally do. So very happy to contact people by email. I'm very happy for you to give out my email address to people if they contact you.
Okay, so I will make sure to put it as a contact. Will contact me first, and I will send information back to you. Once again, thank you so much for your time, and have a nice day in Singapore.
It's been an absolute pleasure.